there's all kinds of examples in the book, encouraging people how to use your own strengths and skills and talents and resources and your network to do good for animals, and to pause for a moment and realize who you know, who you're connected to, what skills you have that you hadn't thought about. Maybe you have these carpentry skills or welding skills or filmmaking skills or public speaking skills or art, information technology skills or computer programming or coding skills, something that is, or in any kind of use for utility that reduces animal suffering in whatever capacity or context we're using.
All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life, and this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, a really dear friend of mine, Mr. Robert Cheeke. So I'm going to go a little bit into Robert's story and what he's accomplished, because we're going to be covering some interesting topic about his new book today. So for these guys that don't know, Robert grew up on a farm in Corvallis, Oregon, where he adopted a vegan lifestyle in 1995 at the age of 15 and weighing just 120 pounds. And today he's the author of the books of Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, Shredded, Plant-Based Muscle, and the New York Times best-selling author book, The Plant-Based Athlete, which I have right here behind me. And his latest, The Impactful Vegan, which will be released on June 25th, 2024. They're very close, near to this recording being posted. And he's often referred to as the godfather of vegan bodybuilding, growing the industry from infancy in 2002 to where it is today. As a natural bodybuilding champion, Robert is considered one of the Veg News magazine's most influential vegan athletes. He tours around the world sharing his story of transformation from a skinny farm kid to a champion vegan bodybuilder. Robert is also the founder of Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness and maintains the website veganbodybuilding.com. He is a regular contributor to Forks Over Knife, the Center for Nutrition Studies, Vegan Strong, and No Meat Athlete. And he's a former multi-sport athlete and has followed a plant-based diet for more than 20 years now. Now, Robert lives in Colorado with his amazing wife and 2 rescued chihuahuas. Robert, welcome to the show, man.
Maxim, it is great to be here with you today. You're one of my favorite people in the movement. You know that, but I want the audience to know that too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to talk about your new book. I'm excited we get to record. We always have a blast every single time you record. So yeah, let's get into it. I have a digital copy of your book, which I'm sure my editor can put on the screen here, but you obviously have it behind you. So I'd love to talk about, oh, you have it right beside you. It's perfect. So The Impactful Vegan. So the tagline is how you can save more lives and make the biggest difference for animals and the planet. So I'd love to ask you, what prompted you to want to go and write that book after the success of The Plant-Based Athlete?
Yeah, well, first of all, Maxim, number one, your signed hardcover, you can hear that, hardcover copy is in the mail. I signed it yesterday or the day before in Dallas, Texas, and it's on the way. And
thank you.
Yeah, and I've got mine right here. Super exciting. Why The Impactful Vegan? Well, that's a very good question.
Let me just add one thing, sorry, before we get further. For the people listening, we're going to be giving away 5 copies of Robert's book at the end of this podcast. So you want to make sure that you stay tuned until the end. Sorry, I just need to make sure that people listen till the end to have access to the giveaway. So sorry, go for it.
Oh yeah, that is a great reminder that, and Maxim, thank you for giving away 5 copies of The Impactful Vegan to your listeners. That is super amazing, super generous of you, and I'm grateful for that. So let's talk about why The Impactful Vegan. Well, as you very graciously mentioned during my rather long introduction, only long, I think, because I've been doing this for 3 decades, but thank you for that. As you mentioned during my introduction, I've already written 4 books on building your body on a plant-based diet, on vegan fitness, on vegan bodybuilding, on being a plant-based athlete. I have published 1,200, if not 1,300 pages on that subject in book form alone. not to mention decades worth of articles, magazine contributions, and opinion pieces and informational articles, website articles, literally hundreds of newsletters, if not more than that, about this topic. And quite frankly, Maxim, I didn't have much else to say about vegan fitness. I'm also in my mid 40s. I've been doing this since I was a teenager. I've put on 100 pounds on a plant-based diet. I've been a champion bodybuilder. I've been on magazine covers. I've traveled to 5 continents speaking about this subject. And it was really time for me to do something else. I mean, there's so many other plant-based athletes out there, yourself included, who are taking the torch and running with it and doing their own thing, coaching, competing, helping others. I mean, there wasn't even coaching back when I was competing decades ago. Now it's something that so many people are doing, and for good reason. People are hiring coaches for very good reasons. But that's not me. I'm not a coach. I have been focused throughout my entire career on being effective for animals and reducing animal suffering and really being an impactful vegan. And so this came about as a desire to want to keep writing, to want to keep telling stories, to want to keep, it almost seems ego to say it, egocentric to say inspiring people, but I guess I'll say that. I wanted to inspire, motivate people through my work. I wanted to use my experiences over the course of decades of being what I consider a highly impactful vegan to share that with others so they can more effectively reduce animal suffering in the work that they do, regardless of what they do, whether they work in the for-profit space, the nonprofit space, whether they are a manager or an employee or a contributor or a contractor, or even if they're unemployed but care a lot about animals and want to find ways to help them. I wanted to write something that would resonate with everybody who cares about animals. Not just a book for vegans about how to be a more impactful vegan, but a book for anybody who cares about reducing suffering. And so more specifically, I'll get really granular here. I'll be really specific. I realized I wasn't going to write what would have been almost guaranteed a second New York Times bestseller, almost guaranteed. Not that you can guarantee to make the list, but had my co-author Matt Fraser and I done a plant-based athlete cookbook on the heels of the New York Times bestseller, The Plant-Based Athlete, it would have been incredible. Cookbooks always sell well, better than regular books. And so when you already have a best-selling book that's a #1 international bestseller, and then follow it with a cookbook about that subject, it's a home run. It would have been incredible, but my co-author and I decided not to do that. I wanted to keep writing, and he wanted to take a break from writing. And we only wanted to work together, not go solo on a project under that same brand. So I'm just telling you how it all unfolded. We had a heart-to-heart talk, and decided we were going to go separate ways. Still friends. I've been at his house recently. I know his family, his wife, his kids. I stayed at his house. He's a great guy. The only reason I'm a New York Times bestselling author is because of my collaboration with him. Tons of gratitude for that. But we weren't going to work together anymore. We achieved success that both of us predicted and dreamt of, and we did it, and it was amazing. But it was time for me to get back to my roots. I was even on the farm that I grew up on with farm animals all around me when I had that call with him a few years ago, just months after we made the bestseller list, and decided that he was going to focus on his brand, No Meat Athlete and Complement, and I was going to get back to writing. And what better thing to write about as I was reflecting right there on the farm about the impact I've had throughout my life, reducing animal suffering, making a difference in the lives of others, than teaching other people how to do exactly that. And so, I'm telling you the real specifics. I was out harvesting walnuts on the farm I grew up on. I was thinking for 8 hours a day, doing manual labor, agricultural work, that if I could make a living doing it, that's what I would do. I just love it. I love harvesting food. And honestly, I say it all the time to friends, family. That's what I would do if I could make a living doing it. I just love it. And I was out there 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, maybe 12 hours a day, thinking. No one around me. I was mostly working solo, harvesting walnuts morning until night. exhausting, physically demanding work. I feel like I built my body, built my character. I do this every year. It's not new for me. But what was new for me was thinking and reflecting on this particular subject. How can I most effectively use everything I've done in my career, in my life, to help animals in these impactful ways? Because I looked across. I was standing there harvesting walnuts, and I looked across at baby calves in the field, at cows in the field with ear tags, with numbers, identifications as property, as commodities, knowing it was my own family, the people that I perhaps love the most in this world, that are raising those animals to be sold in the auction, slaughtered, and turned into someone else's meal. And I thought, well, what can I do? Can't just cut down the fences and let them run around in the street or in the roads. I can't, have these conversations with my family that will be more productive than they've been in the last 30 years. But what I can do is understand what I invented, this acronym I invented called Strong V. I can understand how to leverage my Strong V. Those are my skills, talents, resources, other strengths, network, generosity, and volunteering to do the absolute most for the animals that I don't see, that I don't meet, the ones that aren't staring me in the face, asking me, perhaps, maybe they don't know what's coming. Maybe they're not asking me for a brighter future. Maybe they have no idea what's ahead of them. But I know there's a lot of animals that are crying out for help, and I wanted to answer the call. And you know what, Maxim, that led me to go to a bookstore and look for Animal Liberation, the book that started the animal rights movement, really, about 50 years ago, by Peter Singer. Yeah. And I didn't find it. But you know what I found? I found Peter Singer's book, The Most Good You Can Do, which was my introduction to effective altruism. I read that book. I loved it. I was moved by it. That led me to William McCaskill's book, Doing Good Better, the co-founder of the effective altruism movement. That led me to Nick Cooney's book, How to Be Great at Doing Good. And I was hooked. I learned about maximizing our impact on reducing suffering around the world. These books were all focused primarily on reducing human poverty in the poorest parts of the world, with the poorest people in the world. I'm talking about, you and I have these comfortable rooms we're sitting in, comfortable backgrounds, very comfortable and luxurious lives. And there's 1 billion people who are going to go hungry tonight, who don't know where their next meal is going to come from. There are millions of people that don't have access to fresh water, clean water, don't know where they're going to get it, or have to walk 6 miles and go find some. There are people probably in the millions also that wonder when they go to bed tonight, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, if they're going to get bitten by a mosquito and contract malaria and possibly die. That's the reality for a lot of people in Africa, in Asia, Central South America, and obviously throughout the developed world as well, in North America, Europe, Australia, etc. And I thought there's a lot of really good stuff in these books about how to reduce that suffering. I could share lots of examples, but I thought, you know what? We need to take these principles, these applications, these strategies, and apply them to the most vulnerable among us, those that suffer in the greatest numbers and to the greatest degree, which are farmed animals. Not just animals in general, but farmed animals who have it the worst. Even farmed fish, not to be excluded. Farmed chickens, farmed cows, turkeys, many others that are goats that are used in exploitation and end up most frequently on our plates around the world. So, Maxim, that is a very detailed and perhaps the most detailed introduction I've given anyone to why I wrote this book. It's not just, oh, here's something else I can sell to somebody. I don't care if I make $1 from the book, but I hope the book raises millions of dollars for the greatest and most effective animal charities in the world. And that's why I wrote it.
I think that's the right reason and a beautiful reason to write this book, right? And because a lot of people write the book from a status perspective sometimes as well. And, I get it. Like we talked about, there's a game to it all, but I think you're going to be able to have tremendous impact. And so what is kind of when you were writing it, obviously the intention was to save animals, but did you kind of have like a clear goal or an outcome that you wish to accomplish out of having that book out in the world?
Yeah, the entire purpose of the Impactful Vegan is to have it as a useful tool. Utility is really the purpose. The book is not something to read and say that was a good book. I enjoyed that. The book is designed that when you read through it, you are compelled to take actions all throughout the book. You're compelled to determine what animal charity evaluators has deemed as the most effective and impactful animal charities in the world after looking at 3,000 of them. And they give their top 10 list basically year after year, which is for 2002 highlighted in the book, and 2003 you can find online and on down the line. So it's designed to have you pause for a moment and say, you know what, these are organizations worthy of my financial contribution, my donation. The book is designed to have you pause for a moment when I ask you to remove your personal biases in your regional biases and realize that just outside the comforts of our own borders, there's an untold amount of suffering happening in the developing world, including for animals. And so I encourage readers to pause and reflect upon contributing to international organizations where the US dollar stretches so much further than it will right here in the United States or Canada. There's all kinds of examples in the book, including that strong V that I referenced earlier, encouraging people how to use your own strengths and skills and talents and resources and your network to do good for animals, and to pause for a moment and realize who you know, who you're connected to, what skills you have that you hadn't thought about. Maybe you have these carpentry skills or welding skills or filmmaking skills or public speaking skills or art, poetry skills, handyman or handywoman skills. You have information technology skills or computer programming or coding skills. You have something that is tangible, perhaps even physical strength, where you can lift hay bales and do and move large equipment on farms. You have access to your friend or your neighbor, or like someone like my brother who has these large pieces of equipment that could help out when needed at an animal sanctuary or in any kind of use for utility that reduces animal suffering in whatever capacity or context we're using. That again is a moment to pause and say, you know, who am I connected to? Like when the Game Changers came to me and asked me if I knew anybody who could help with the fundraising for the film, I certainly didn't have any money, but within 30 seconds of sending an email, I raised $100,000 for the film just like that, because I contacted one of my wealthy friends who was able to make that contribution. When I was invited, if I was willing to, pay the $150 fee and attend the annual Love and Arms Animal Sanctuary Gala event, at the time I could barely afford to go, especially for me and my wife. It's through $300 for a 3-hour evening as a fundraiser event. But because of my network, my connections, I spent a few minutes sending emails, and I recruited thousands and thousands of dollars in donated products to be used in the silent auction. And by the end of the night, we raised over $200,000 for the animal sanctuary, and I was part of that. I give plenty of examples that are not mine. Yes, I've done some of these things because I've always been an impactful vegan before it had a name. I was always effective. I've always have been. That's why I went into fitness. That's why I use bodybuilding as a vehicle to promote veganism, when the number one objection to veganism as a society is that you can't get enough protein. I shattered that on my own. Obviously it hasn't reached the full masses yet, but I unequivocally shattered that myth by gaining 100 pounds and becoming a champion vegan bodybuilder multiple times over, and opened the door for Tori Washington, Nimai Delgado, and so many others to follow. But I give plenty of examples that are not mine, of like this guy, Lewis, who's a website designer, who's very, very good. So good that he has, I think, 400,000 YouTube followers or subscribers. He's very good at what he does. And so he donates his time and services to animal rights organizations, saving them tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff wages they would normally have to pay somebody else, some other technology person or designer. And instead, those hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars they save can be directly attributed to reducing animal suffering through their programs and education and outreach. And also that website is very likely, because it's designed by this very skillful individual, very likely to be more professional and recruit more financial donations from the general public, be higher search engine, all that kind of stuff. Many other examples throughout the book. And so that's, Maxim, that's what this book is designed to do. You don't just read it and say, wow, that was a really good book. In fact, one of the best vegan books I've ever read in my life, which I think people will say. And I say that with no ego. There were 40 other people who contributed to this book. It's not just me. I'm the writer. I'm the narrator. I'm the storyteller. I'm the one that assembled it. I had a team of 5 editors who were amazing. I interviewed 40 people, including legends in our industry, who gave insights. I recruited endorsements from the biggest names our industry has ever seen: Rich Roll, Tabitha Brown, Carly Bodrug, Dan Boutner, Robbie Lockie, Ocean Robbins, Rip Esselstyn, Kathy Freston, go down the list. This is a collaborative effort. It is a collaborative effort. My name's on it because it was my idea, and I put in 2.5 years working on it, and I put it all together. But the reason it's one of the best books ever constructed in the vegan literature is because of the collaboration. When you bring in Gene Bauer into the mix, when you bring in Vicky Bond and Joanne Molinaro and Paul Shapiro and Bruce Friedrich and so many others, Chef AJ, John Lewis, and it's Melanie Joy, Tony Akamoto, it's going to take on a new feel. Dr. Michael Clapper, who has amazing contributions. Yeah. It's going to provide these different voices and expertise from, I've never done the math. I'm thinking of it for the first time. But it must be like 500 years of vegan living combined, or 1,000 years of vegan living combined, because many people I interviewed, Brenda Davis, vegan for over 40 years, Chef AJ, vegan over 40 years, Dr. Michael Clapper, vegan over 40 years. They've been there, done that. The top CEOs in our space, Matthew DeGruyter, who runs Veggie Grill and Next Level Burger. He's in the book, his insights for for-profit businesses. Pinky Cole. I was at Slutty Vegan yesterday in Dallas. In fact, I signed a book for Pinky. She runs a $100 million vegan brand. Slutty Vegan. She's in the book. That's what makes this book so amazing. It covers everything you would want to know about being an impactful vegan. Not why vegan and here's why it matters for animals and the environment and health. There's a million people talking about that. I'm talking about you, the listener, being the best that you can be for animals. And that's what this book is going to deliver.
So that's beautiful. So helping, in a certain way, kind of helping people figure out what their gift is to be able to kind of help support the movement, right? And, you've brought up this concept of effective altruism. Is that kind of what that is? Do you mind kind of giving a definition of what that represents? Because I know it comes up often in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. There are official definitions for effective altruism. I'll give you the brief version. The very brief version is just doing the most good for those who are suffering to the greatest degree. So basically alleviating suffering most effectively. And so what that means is that there's a lot of things we can do, Maxim. There's a lot of things we can do that are good, that help reduce, we can donate here, we can volunteer here, we can buy this product here. But what, based on measurable calculations, does the most good? That's what effective altruism is all about, is maximum impact, maximizing our influence. And it's also recognizing that you're suffering, I'm suffering, my neighbor is suffering, your neighbor's suffering in all these different degrees. But who's suffering to the greatest degree? And how do we most effectively alleviate that? So let's use examples that I was inspired by effective reading books about effective altruism. So they compare. So you could be suffering maybe you lost your job, you're feeling down, went through a breakup, whatever. Those are areas of suffering that many of us experience. There's also suffering from blindness, or living with AIDS, or chronic diarrhea, which kills, I think, like 1 million people a year or something throughout the world. There's suffering from starvation, not I'm on meal prep or calorie deficit for my fitness goals.
I'm doing a cut. Yeah.
I'm doing a cut, like in my, affluent, house or apartment, and the comforts of, microwaves and grocery stores down the street. No real suffering from starvation, where people are just dying by the millions. So, or as I mentioned earlier, people who may contract malaria and die, or people in various parts of the world, especially in areas of Asia, where there's this eye disease that's very common that makes people go blind at a young age, and they're blind for the rest of their life. That's a different level of suffering than, my Amazon package that was delayed and it pissed me off, because now I don't have this thing that I wanted to sell and make money off of, or whatever. Like, let me get more specific. If you have a certain amount of money you want to contribute to enrich the world, let's say you have $1,000, and I'm making this up on the spot. Okay. So let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are scenarios throughout the books that I read. They all use some very similar scenarios. So these are not totally made up out of thin air. These are ones that many of them use. So let's see. How can we do this here? You have $1,000 to help the world, Maxim. I'm going to make up 4 options, so it's not just A or B. I'm just going to go with the flow here. Okay, for that $1,000, you could, let's say, you could give to starving people in Africa, let's say. Okay, that's one option. And maybe each meal is 50 cents. So you can determine how many meals that's going to feed and for how long and all that kind of stuff. Let's say you're out in California these days. You're just really fond of this museum down the street. And you think, you know what? They need to do some construction to add this new display area for this really expensive art. So maybe I'll give my $1,000 there, where they can expand the museum. Okay. So those are your 2 options so far. Let's say, or you could spend the $1,000 at a animal shelter for dogs and cats, where otherwise maybe these animals might not find a home, and they have to be put down depending on the type of shelter and these kind of scenarios. And then let's say another one is you spend $1,000 to give to an organization internationally that works with sparing the lives of chickens for as little as 33 cents per, like, it actually going to save their life. It's going to spare them from slaughter.
Yeah.
You can see some of these are tough. And hopefully
I can tell you what I would do.
Yeah. Tell me what you do.
So to me, I would donate where my value lies. So if you had added in there that, like, donating to cancer patients directly, I probably would have donated there because of my personal story to it. But you gave like a bunch of good options. So to me, the museum, I don't really have any value associated to that, so I wouldn't care too much. But for the chickens and the people that are starving, I would just split the money 3 ways. And then I would split the money 3 ways, because I wouldn't be able to kind of make a decision as to, like, this one should get a higher percentage than this one. In my heart, I wouldn't be able to. So I would just split it even amongst the 3 other ones.
Okay. That's very, very interesting. Can I challenge you a little bit?
Of course. This is a great exercise.
Yeah. And this is just an exercise. And this is just what the books are about, what my book is about, what the books that I read on effective altruism are about. And I think this will be a fun exercise. So I would challenge you, Maxim, to not consider your values at all. because your personal perspective on what you value doesn't have an influence on the suffering of those other entities. It doesn't, and this is, I'm just not you, but anybody. It doesn't matter how you feel about starving people in, we use, I think, sub-Saharan Africa. It's how they feel, what they're suffering. It's not how you feel about dogs and cats. It's their level of suffering. And it's not how you feel about chickens. It's their level of suffering. So it is very difficult to answer this question. But by removing our personal biases as much as possible, we can look at what action is going to save the most lives, the most individual lives. And I would argue that sparing the lives of chickens for 33 cents might be the best action we can take because of a number of factors, including the idea of neglect, which is part of effective altruism, meaning that there's already millions, actually over 1 million organizations just in America focused on reducing human suffering, including sending trillions of dollars to those starving in sub-Saharan Africa. So there's already a lot of people working on it. Okay. There's a lot of people working on it. And also dogs and cats are man's best friends. Like everybody loves them. So people are already much more likely to contribute there. And of course, the museum, nobody cares about. That's exactly right. You eliminated that one immediately, which is the best thing to do, because that doesn't reduce suffering for anybody. That only enhances the lives of those affluent who have access to going to museums and want to have their lives enriched by beautiful art. It's not a life or death situation. And so I would argue that for as little as 33 cents, we can spare an individual's entire life. We can save their life through all kinds of collaborations with companies and organizations, through education and outreach, with all these programs that these organizations working with chickens do, including internationally. And so there's a lot of difficult scenarios. Even when I was reading these effective altruism books, and they gave you all kinds of scenarios. They were much different. There were scenarios like, is it better to give books to those that don't have them in poor countries? Is it good? Is it better to teach the value of using soap to kill germs? Because believe it or not, a lot of people around the world, by the millions, maybe by the billions, don't know about that. They don't know about using soap to help fight off disease. They don't have access to it. They've never seen soap before. Is that better? Or is it better to get food to people to prolong their life until more aid is available? These are difficult things, but effective altruism actually has a number of principles to be able to actually make that determination. And one of those is called the QALY, QALY. It's quality adjusted life years, which is which actions are going to have the most qualities, to have the most quality adjusted life years. As an example, just so I don't lose listeners here, and this is just fascinating and profoundly important stuff. For example, that eye disease that's very common in, I think, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, that part of the world, that impacts a whole lot of people. It can be prevented through surgery for like $100. That's just because of the money exchange rate.
I heard about that. Mr. Beast did that, right? He did a video on that where he helped 2,000 people or something with that specific surgery. So yes, I'm familiar with it.
It's not glaucoma, but it has a name similar to that. I don't have it in front of me, although I have the book somewhere nearby, but it's it starts with a G, I believe. It's a common eye disease. But when you talk about quality adjusted life years, for like $100, because it's so cheap to do surgery in that part of the world with US dollars, you can prevent someone, maybe the age of 20, from contracting blindness. And so now they can see for the next 60, 70 years of their life. And so that is an adjustment over the course of, 70 years. There's other people that maybe have some sort of disease or issue where they're not going to have as long of a life. And so how can we improve their life for a shorter amount of years? Or how do we scale the amount of suffering on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most severe? And I think, something like blindness would be pretty high as far as, affecting the quality of your life. Whereas maybe this chronic, very mild itch on your left elbow, you don't notice it when you're playing video games or watching TV or playing basketball because you're distracted, and you can kind of get through, you get through your day, which is a lot different than maybe having chronic diarrhea that impacts you every single day. And you can't go out in public, and you can't go with friends. You can't go places because you might have a, diarrhea episode or whatever. That's the power. And it is complex. I'm not going to say it's easy, but that's the power of effective altruism, how you can determine which suffering is greater. And even in the books I read, it almost seems like insensitive to compare these situations, but you have to make decisions. And so it compares people who are living with AIDS versus those who are in food deserts, or those who can't read, or those who maybe are in a dangerous part of the world or whatever. There's all these things. And it's fascinating to figure that out, where we should put our time, money, energy, our efforts, our volunteer time. And so in doing so, I'm asking people to look outside of our own species, look outside of our preferred animals or our value system. Like you said, there's a closeness to you, like, because, cancer has impacted you and your family, or maybe for some people, diabetes has impacted their family and taking their loved ones too soon. And we're biased towards these things because how it impacted us. But again, outside of our experiences, you may not know people who are suffering with blindness or starvation or malaria throughout the world, but their suffering is still there and it's still real. And that's what I'm trying to get with people with animal suffering. We see it. We know what it takes for food to end up, if you want to call it food, at McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and Arby's and all that. Like, we're pretty aware that it comes from the farming of animals or the factory farming of animals, even if it's out of sight and out of mind. But are there levels and layers to that, where there's food production in certain countries where they don't have the equipment or veterinary care to help with some of the suffering that goes on before an animal reaches time of slaughter? And can we alleviate some of that? And can we look at different animal species where, if I ask listeners, you can only, on a regular basis, you can only help one, chickens or cows on a regular basis, who do you help? And the most logical answer tends to be chickens, because it takes about 150 or 175 individual animal lives to create the same edible meat as one cow. So it's almost 200 to 1 every single time. Every single time 2 cows are slaughtered for food, 400 chickens, right? Every time, do my math here, 5 cows go to slaughter, 1,000 chickens just died. That's why the numbers are so astronomical, with chickens being 70, 80, 90 billion annually. And fish are in the trillion. Fish and shrimp are over a trillion, 1.3 last I checked. And so that helps us prioritize a little bit and allocate resources, awareness, support to those who are suffering to the greatest degree. So that's a very long and complex answer, but those scenarios and examples, I think, help us determine where to use our time and energy that's finite, and what to do with it. And that's why I wrote 1,000 pages on the subject, distilled down into hopefully the best 270 pages or so that ended up making the cut. But it was not easy. 2.5-year process, writing 1,000 pages,
I'm
evaluating
sure.
all these very difficult questions to answer.
Two things kind of come up for me. One of them is when you start saying like, hey, there's so many organizations for, for starvation in the world. There's so many organizations for all of these things. It is true that there is a smaller percentage of organization to kind of save the animal. So it does make sense to kind of allocate more resources there, because a lot of those other nonprofit or for-profit organizations like do have way more funding than the animals ever had, right? Hopefully it's going to grow as kind of the years come, progress. But it made me think of this show that Ivy and I've been watching on TV, which is, as like, it's a doctor, and he has to like make decision between like this elder patient that kind of came in and this young guy that had a heart attack. And he's like, who do I go and save first? Right. And he chose to kind of go for the young guy because he was like, hey, he's had many years ahead of him that he still has to go through. But it's like, it is a hard decision to make. And it's very, like, as you were talking about it, I was like, wow, it's very confronting and conflicting to trying to like make sense of those emotions. So my question for you is like, how is that process of you reading writing those 1,000 pages, distilling it down to the core of the book now? Like, how did you deal with, did it feel conflicting? Did it feel confronting? And what's some of the things that you've learned as you're kind of like writing all of these pages?
Yeah, absolutely, Maxim. It did feel, it felt conflicting, confronting. It also felt educational and enlightening. I learned that there's a lot that I don't know. And I think that almost anyone, even those who are longtime vegans, will discover that reading this book, because there's so many voices in the book and experiences from literally decades and centuries of combined vegan living. And not just combined vegan living, but like activist advocacy kind of work. It really challenged what I thought I knew and what I thought was a good use of my time and resources. And so, for example, it's not just like where to donate money, right? And I even explicitly, I hope, explain that in the book, where there's even advice against not donating to disaster relief, for example, because our intuition might be to do so. Or maybe I know someone who lives there, or even my family was impacted by it, by this tornado or tsunami or whatever. Like, I'm emotionally connected, but so is the rest of the world. And what the data shows is that many disaster relief foundations, organizations, nonprofits get more resources than they need, which takes away from resources that could have gone to prevent something else. Like you said, there's this triage thing. One of the books opened up with that, Maxim. Your doctor scenario was perfect. One of the books that I read opened up with a scenario of the genocide in Rwanda. Just people dying everywhere. So who do you help? The person with the sprained ankle? The person who's bleeding from, who's missing limbs? The person who has head trauma? The doctors had to go in and put a 1, 2, or 3 based on priority. Those who had the most severe, like they're going to die very soon if we don't do something. They all got treated first. And then the people who had, like, let's say their leg blown off, but they could still live, they're second. And then those who are suffering from, fatigue and dehydration and headaches and whatever, they're maybe not going to get treatment at all, because there's all these other priorities. So on that note of prioritizing what the heck to do if we're trying to help animals the most, one of the things that I found most fascinating, and I hope that readers will too, is looking at the work by Faunalytics, for example. They're one of the top animal charities in the world. They're the biggest animal research data library on the planet, maybe 5,000 research studies. Faunalytics, Faunlytics, if I can spell. Faunalytics.org, go check it out. Faunalytics did something really interesting. What they did was they asked omnivores, non-vegans, what tactics or approaches to animal advocacy most positively impacted them. So what we think, Maxim, is we go through our lives, we think, well, my favorite form of activism is through whatever, through fitness.
Looking
Well, my
jacked.
favorite form of activism is through protesting, doing demonstrations, holding signs and yelling, using megaphone.
Yeah.
My favorite form of activism is using social media, to get viral posts about, dairy farming or whatever it is. My favorite form of activism, you get the idea. We're very biased towards ourselves because it's what we like. It's what we like doing. It's what we feel comfortable doing. It's what we think is the most powerful thing to do because it's what we enjoy or it's what we know how to do. But it doesn't mean that's the best thing to do. And that's what's so eye-opening about this book and what makes this book different from any other book that's ever been written on this subject is that it's going to challenge you. Like I challenged you in a very friendly way earlier about, you were going to have these priorities based on certain values that you held dear and what resonated with you and all of that. I'm saying effective altruism takes a unbiased scientific approach to reducing suffering. That's why those in sub-Saharan Africa get anti-malaria bed nets for a couple dollars to prevent prevent kids from dying for $2 or $20, whatever it is, for an anti-malaria bed net. It's very cheap. I think it's between $2 and $20. That's why they're going to get priority over the person who's hungry in the United States who has access to friendly people on the street or churches or food kitchens or government intervention or family or, like I said, the kind person who recognizes suffering in our developed world and offers a helping hand. Happens all the time. I gave money to someone yesterday who was walking beside me on the street in Dallas, Texas, and he had his own struggles. I helped him out a little bit. That happens in the Western culture. It doesn't happen throughout most of the world. And so what Faunalytics did was they found out how omnivores, non-vegans, perceive us, right? Because that's who we're trying to reach. The 99%. We're trying really. I mean, I wrote this down somewhere even. Oh yeah, I think I wrote it down right here. I've had it written down for weeks or months maybe, which is really the only question we need to ask. That's not really the only one, but maybe the most important question we can ask. And I'll just look at my note and read it directly. I wrote this down some time ago. It says, what actions we can take? What can you do? What can I do? Okay. What actions help inspire omnivores to change their eating habits? Man, if we can answer that, we can reduce suffering. 99.99%, I'll repeat that, 99.99% of animal suffering is in the food system. It's what we sit down to do 6 times a day. You don't buy a wallet or leather belt 6 times a day. You don't buy new shoes 6 times a day. You don't go to circus or bullfighting or rodeo 6 times every single day for the rest of your life. You just don't. But you sit down and eat. The average American these days, the average adult American consumes 3,540 calories per day. Anyone who thinks we eat 3 meals a day is kidding themselves. We don't. We eat 6 times a day, probably at minimum. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks in between and grazing throughout the day. We're probably closer to, who knows, 8 to 10 times we eat a day. So that's what we need to answer. What can we do to have a positive influence on omnivores who are currently contributing to the supply and demand of animals in the food system? And so that was perhaps maybe one of the most powerful parts of the book, because we have our favorite forms of advocacy. And I know I have to challenge a lot of other people, other podcast hosts that I'm on who have different forms of advocacy and it's their favorite, and it may not be what the data suggests. And so I reveal what the data suggests in the book. I can give some spoilers right now. Again, this is not what makes you feel empowered or what makes you feel like you're contributing to a cause that you care deeply about, but it's what actually makes a difference in the actions of those we're trying to reach. And that's important. So as it turns out, this may be no surprise to many listening, but as it turns out, something like throwing red paint on someone wearing a fur coat and yelling and screaming at them, maybe unsurprisingly doesn't get them to change their worldview and their eating habits and become vegan in that very moment.
I'm not shocked by that.
That way.
I wouldn't respond well either.
But we still do it. Yeah. And I really don't want to point fingers. It's not about that. But I'm not even going to say where I was, what city, what state, what country, nothing. But like, for example, I just talked to somebody fairly recently who was doing a demonstration. They were disrupting. I don't want to single anybody out or anything. I won't even say what store it was, but they went in and just caused all kinds of destruction in a major store, knocking things over, smashing things, putting things all over the floor, creating a big mess that staff is going to spend perhaps hours cleaning up to make some sort of demonstration for the suffering of a particular animal that was being exploited in those particular products. That person was very enthusiastic. The police were called. They bragged about that they weren't even arrested. They got away with it. They felt very good about their actions, that they really were speaking for the animals there. They're speaking for the voiceless. And in this particular case, I kind of bit my tongue. I know the data. I know the evidence. I know this is completely ineffective.
Yeah, I feel like you call more compassion, give more compassion.
Right, and I could have told them that. I could have rained on their parade. I could have even condemned them. What the hell are you doing? You're making vegans look bad. You're making vegans look extreme. You don't represent the ideology. That's not. Yeah, I get it. Animals are suffering every single second of the day, but you causing like damage to a store and making a huge scene and getting the police called and all that doesn't make all those bystanders, all those shoppers say, you know what? Light bulb. I'm going to become a compassionate vegan now because of the non-compassionate actions of these individuals. And
no one's ever said I'm going to start eating tofu after seeing that, for sure.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just like, and again, I'm not disrespecting anybody's, I hope not anybody's organized religion, but I also just recently saw some person screaming on the street with a megaphone, yelling at everybody about their particular religion. And I didn't think, man, that's what I've been waiting for. That's my sign. That's my calling to join. I want to be on the street yelling at people and name calling and telling them they're going to hell and that they're worthless and they're living these pathetic lives of sinners. That doesn't make me sign up. Give me the clipboard. Here's my personal contact info. I want to be part of the club. I'll see you next Tuesday or next Saturday at Town Square, and I will bring my megaphone and my box to stand on and scream and yell at other people and call them names. It doesn't work. The things that work, Maxim, are not very sexy. They're not very sexy to write letters to newspapers or to politicians, or try to enact policy change or legislative changes, or to write information articles that get published on major websites or major magazines or newspapers or major forms of media. It's not exciting. It's very tedious. But the data suggests that those do very, very well to spark an interest in those who are currently consuming animals and get them to question their activities. It's what brought Earthling Ed into veganism in the first place. I told that story in the book. I can wait for people to read that. You can read that somewhere midway or 3/4 of the way through the book and learn all about why Earthling Ed became vegan, what inspired him to do so, and how he became such a powerful and impactful voice for animals, and perhaps why he chooses some of his strategies that he does to lead by example and to be inquisitive and be patient and be informative and be deliberate and use his own skill set, which is quite a unique skill set. to do that. And so I know this, I can already tell that this is like a much deeper conversation than I've had with others about this topic. Like from the very beginning, giving scenarios and how to differentiate levels of suffering. Like we've gone a lot deeper than I have in any other conversation. Yeah. And I don't want to lose listeners. I'm hoping they're actually quite engaged. I can sit here and talk about how great the book is and all these fun stories, and it's the best book I've ever written, and it's going to change the world and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of like explaining why, because it's been fundamentally life-changing for me. Why I decided to do what I do after writing this book, why I support Dharma Voices for Animals, an international organization that mostly works in Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Thailand. Why I support the innovation. The only way we're going to move forward is through innovation, technology innovation, food science advancement. This is why I support the Good Food Institute. Just for context, we didn't stop exploiting horses for transportation because we cared about horses and we wanted them to have more rest and not pull us around in a cart and whip them and all this kind of stuff and have them carry heavy things and work in hot temperatures for long days until they became exhausted, too weak, or feeble and died. We stopped using them because bicycles and automobiles were invented, and it was a lot easier to get around than horses. You know, we didn't stop. We didn't stop harpooning whales, to use their blubber to heat our, homes, because we cared about whales and thought they were like these beautiful, massive creatures that we should protect. We had kerosene that came around and we could light our lamps and leave whales alone. We didn't stop plucking ducks and geese, for their feathers and quills for pens because we liked the sounds they make or thought they were cute. We were able to, create pens in other ways to do our writing, and ducks and geese and other feathers became obsolete. We just didn't need to do that anymore. And that's what it's going to take in the food system, where many experts predict that this whole industrialized food revolution and industrialized large-scale factory farming of animals is just simply not sustainable. It can't carry us through another century or another wave of innovation. And because we know we can make meat from plants, and we know we can make meat from cultivated cells, and we know we can use precision fermentation to make meat and whey and other animal proteins, that is probably going to be the way meat and animal protein is made in the future without animals. It'll either be made through animal cells or through plants or through both. And that's just how meat is made. And if there's one thing that's unmistakably clear that we know about ourselves, that we know about our society, is that we do not care where our meat comes from. We do not care, because 99%
people are eating chicken nuggets, so they don't care.
Right, because 99% of it comes from factory farms. Even those who say, no, I eat grass-fed, I eat backyard, I eat small farm. No, they don't, because the numbers don't add up. There's something like, there's like a survey. It was so ridiculous. I don't think I didn't include it in the book, I don't think, but it was this survey that was like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was something like 70% of people, or they claim maybe 70% of the time, they consume meat that is from, small farms or free range or organic or whatever. So 70% claim this, yet the reality was like 3%. Like it just doesn't add up. Like that's not just like people who say, Maxim, I'll tell you right now, I work out 6 days a week. No, you don't. Promise you don't. You work out 3 days a week. 100%. That's 100% true. 100%. Oh, no, Maxim. I eat greens every day. I eat salad greens every day. No, you don't. You hate salad. You don't eat salad. You eat salad once a week when you feel like you have to, you feel obligated to. Or Maxim,
Yeah.
I take my dog for a walk twice a day, every day. No, you don't. You're lying. Not when you're sick, not when you're late for work, not when you're out of town on weekends, not when it's raining, not when it's snowing, not when it's muddy, not when you don't feel like it. Like we just tell ourselves these stories and we're wrong all of the time. We're wrong all the time. And so we say things like, oh yeah, I eat, better for the environment animals or, meat or whatever. No, you don't. You eat fast food. You don't care. If meat comes from cultivated cells, you're not grossed out by it. You're not intimidated by it. Yeah. You're going to eat it. If it's tasty and it's cheap and it's right down the street at the fast food place, you're going to eat it. Guaranteed. End of story. No debate. So that's what we've learned. We've learned is that you live in Southern California. You really, Maxim, tell me, you still want to get around on horseback when cars, bikes, buses, trains are available? Tell me, like, if that's what you want to do, you're going to be less than 1%. You're 0 point something percent who's getting around LA, Southern California by horse. There's just not very many.
Don't have the patience for that. It'll take a bit too long for me, especially in California traffic with a horse.
Exactly. And it's not because you love horses and you said, you know what, I really like this gas powered vehicle. I love polluting the air more. I just love it. No, it's because it's more convenient. That's what we're going to do with food. That's what we're going to do with production of all kinds of things. And so we are going to have to rely on innovation. And innovation is what's changed everything. Why we use animals in certain, I mean, how many people, again, maybe I'm not hip on what's going on in Southern California, one of the most populated places on earth. How many people are still wearing raccoon hats to keep their heads warm? They're wearing.
I haven't seen one. Maybe in Venice, I don't know, but I haven't seen one yet.
Yeah.
Venice would be the only spot.
There probably is in Venice. Someone on like a longboard with like a raccoon tail hanging from their head. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, that's maybe a bad example. Venice is pretty warm. How about up in Canada or up in Minnesota? Even if they are 1%,
small. Yes, small. It's smaller than that for sure. I've seen them, but it's way smaller than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like you still see somebody riding a horse every now and then, but it's 1%. Yeah. It's 0.5%. It's 0.2%. So, Maxim, that's what I'm trying to get at. This book talks about all these changes we go through it throughout history of why we used animals and why we don't now, and food is really the next frontier. We already have cultivated meat available in restaurants. I just talked to a guy literally 4 days ago. I was hanging out with this guy 4 days ago from Singapore. It's cultivated meat, I think you know this. It is on menus. Yeah. Not only has it been on menus in Singapore for years, it's now in grocery stores. You just go grab some chicken.
Oh, wow.
Go to the grocery store, grab some chicken. Guess what? It didn't require a slaughter of a chicken. It required the cells from the living chicken that, might be, that chicken might be still, captive, and that sucks, but that's still preventing millions or billions of other chickens from having to be grown and harvested, where you take cells from a few and then, reduce mass suffering. And then you have chicken they told me it's available in grocery stores now in Singapore. It's also available in restaurants in San Francisco and Washington, D.C., perhaps other places right here in the United States. And so what's that going to look like in 5 or 10 years? I mean, look at all those people driving around Teslas in California. That didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. No one had that idea. You remember traveling 20 years ago where you had to carry a map with you before GPS was invented 25 years ago? Anything that increases our convenience, we're going to do. And some is bad. Most of the stuff we wear is made in a sweatshop. somewhere in Southeast
Yeah.
Asia, very likely, or Central America. Uh, that's bad. But
Yeah. Like fast
but
food convenience. Like I can see the theme that like,
yeah,
yeah, it would be like the innovation is going to be the big part. And you wrote somewhere in the book that there's a way to kind of help people. I think it was, you mentioned a simple way to help 135 times more animals than
yeah,
just being vegan. Is
yeah,
that coming down to the innovation, or is that something else?
yeah. That particular statistic comes down to financial contributions to the most effective animal charities in the world. So
Okay.
this should be stated right now that most of us who are vegan, most vegans are going to spare about 365 animals per year on average. Some data suggests a smaller amount. Um,
Yeah.
this is kind of on the high end, but I like to be optimistic with, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I'd like to think that perhaps we'll spare about one animal per day. The real numbers could even be less, But what
Yeah.
I'm showing all readers, every single one of you, potential readers listening right now, is how you can spare 5, 10, 15,000 animal lives or more. And the number I used, I think, was 16,500, which was, I think, 135 times more than the 365 animal lives that we'll share just by living a vegan lifestyle. And by the way, that's not
Yeah.
just living a quiet vegan lifestyle. That's the amount of animals we spare, even by, posting on social media, wearing vegan on our shirt, talking to people about it, just our purchases we make, how we spend our money. But if we can be thoughtful and part ways with a percentage of our annual income, the average American right now, the typical American worker brings in about $55,000 per year. That's what I base the numbers on. And so if we can use 5% of our income, 10% of our income, anywhere in between, or even a smaller amount, start small, 1%. If you're not donating to animal charities at all right now, then 1% a start, then 2%, maybe 5%. So what that means, Maxim, is that there are organizations that are in place. The Humane League, Mercy for Animals, Vegan Outreach. I mean, you know them. There's a ton of them. There's hundreds of them. And some are more effective than others, which I wrote about in the book, and you can see which ones are the best. But they have already spent decades. They've already spent decades doing research and trial and error, and they have their practices in place. They have their foundational approaches. They have relationships with food producers and farmers and media and all of that. They can do so much more good for reducing
Yeah.
animal suffering on a large scale than you and I can on an individual basis. That's why I say, despite your efforts, despite my efforts, we're going to spare about 365 animal lives per year. That's great. That doesn't deserve necessarily a pat on the back, but we can take that number up into the tens of thousands simply by contributing a percentage of our annual income or making monthly donations or end of year donations to the most impactful animal charities. And furthermore, Maxim, this is important. In fact, I got an email about it today from one organization. Furthermore, there are numerous times throughout the year, either on Giving Tuesday, which is after Black Friday weekend and Cyber Monday, or at the very end of the year, right before the new year, when people are doing their year-end tax preparations and yearly donations, or even email I got today. There's times throughout the year where there are wealthy donors who will match donation and will double or triple your donation. So if you were to save, let's be really conservative. Let's say throughout the entire year, you saved $1,000. What is that? A little less than $100 per month you put away in this impact bucket, we'll call it. Shout out to Alexander Hayes that came up with that name, the impact bucket, where you allocate money in your impact bucket. And then after a whole year, let's say you got $1,000 there, you could donate it, or you could wait till like Giving Tuesday and have that $1,000 turn into $3,000 when you donate to the Humane League, where you can spare a chicken's life for as little as 33 cents. Man, now I just donated $3,000 because it was matched by a wealthy donor who cares about that cause. So that's what I'm asking people to do. And I know it's a big ask. I'm asking you to open up your heart, your mind, and your wallet. But guess what? I say this right up front. Anything worth fighting for, Maxim, anything worth fighting for takes financial resources, right? You want to find a cure for cancer. You want to find help for veterans. You want to help prevent child labor or trafficking or starvation or whatever. You want to build infrastructure or rebuild a war-torn area or a natural disaster that needs to be, area needs to be rebuilt. You want to get food to the hungry. You want to help the sick. You want to help the world's poorest people. You want to get medicine, life-saving medicine to people. It all takes money, right? You want to help end factory farming. It takes financial resources. You want to help save a bunch of chickens and turkeys and ducks and fish and small animals. We eat 46 billion turkeys every year to celebrate, to celebrate with our families by destroying someone else's family. Then it takes financial resources. And so we can't be squeamish about it. We can't say, Robert, like, I'm already on a tight budget. Now you're asking me to donate. Yeah. I recognize that. But
let's be honest, right? You said 33 cents to save a chicken?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no way that math is right. If it is, that's crazy. Okay. No, so basically for $5 a day, $5.
Yeah, that'd be 15 chickens a day, right? It's because 3 for $1.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So let's just say you just cut off one Starbucks drink per month.
Yeah, you could say say 15 chickens that day.
180 chickens, I think, a year or something like that. Like, that's a crazy amount. That's 180 chickens a year. Just with cutting out one Starbucks drink. And so people spend money on stupid things. And I get it. Every month I donate to cancer patients at the end of every month, like a percentage of our revenue from our sales. If you care about it, there's always a way to kind of make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this really hit home to me reading Doing Good Better by William McCaskill. I encourage everyone to read that book. It's one of my favorites of all time. Doing Good Better by William McCaskill. And he kind of gave this scenario. And I've adopted and adapted this scenario slightly, I think, the way that I explain it to people. But I just read it. I just read the section in his book, like literally 2 weeks ago on a flight, just rereading his books. I like it so much. Where he gave this example. Maxim, you're walking down the street. You reach into your pocket. You're grabbing maybe your phone. Your phone's ringing. And $100 falls out. You lose it. You don't get it back because you didn't notice it. And now you're 3-4 blocks away. It's gone. How much has your life fundamentally changed? Like your entire life fundamentally changed because you lost $100. Like it's gone. And then you look at the poorest people in the world. William McCaskill used an Indian farmer. Okay. His book now, it is about 10 years old. So I'm sure inflation has changed a little bit. But in his example, this poor farmer in India makes $220 US per year. The whole damn year makes $200.
Yeah.
What if you were to give him that $100? He could put a new roof on his house. He could feed his family and his neighbors. He could
6 months of income.
Almost double his production of farming for $100. And this is what I want people to think about. We all buy stupid stuff. I've got this flat screen TV I hardly ever watch. Big basketball fan. It's down here in the basement. It hardly ever gets turned on because I'm always at my computer trying to do important work. I don't have time for TV sitting there. I watch the one upstairs, but what am I doing with this one down here? Looking around this room that I'm sitting in, very privileged place that I'm at. I got bookshelves and books that were expensive, and I've got things and clothes and more pairs of shoes than I care to admit. I don't know why I have so many. I use them as like slippers inside the house. I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got ring lights and other ring lights and a portable little ring light, and just so I can look pretty on camera. But what if I had spent that money differently? The lives that I could have saved. And I think about that. And I hope everybody thinks about that. And I'm just asking you to open up your heart, your mind, and your wallet just a little bit. And because we are emotional creatures, the thing that happens naturally, and this is not why you should ever do it, you should never be motivated by this, ever, in my opinion, when it comes to giving. But as you know, Maxim, the more you give, the better you feel, the more rewarding it is. Even just as I walked down the street yesterday in Dallas, Texas, and I was able to give some money to a guy who has I was on my way to go buy a $16 vegan burger. This guy's just trying to get some food. Then I was at a gas station filling up my rental car yesterday, right by Dallas Left Field Airport. It's kind of the middle of town there in Dallas. And I was eating my second $16 burger. I got two. And I had a drink, $54 with tip. I just saw the receipt. And in front of me was this woman was walking, a little bit older woman, really struggling. She had one shoe that was barely hanging on. The other one was like her skin was going through it. And like, I almost got out of my car just to go approach her and say, like, what do you need? What can I help you with? Right. And I fought with myself. Like, she's not asking me. I'm just watching her from sitting at the gas pump in my car with the air conditioning on and some country music playing and two expensive vegan burgers and fries and drink. And I had other food, bananas, oranges I could have offered. I had money. I had cash. I just sold like $1,000 worth of products at this vegan expo that I was at. And I didn't do anything. And I think because I was prevented by a number of emotional responses, I thought, well, I don't want to offend her. I mean, she was her clothes were all dirty. Her hair was all dirty. She had a backpack that was actually not even on her back. It was hanging from like her elbows because she was like fatigued and I don't know, maybe 60s or 70s. Shoes that weren't working, skin poking through her shoes. Why the hell didn't I do something? And I think I was afraid of offending her by offering because she wasn't asking. She wouldn't have even seen me. I was calculating in my head, real quick, calculating. Well, what if she gets to the next stoplight and someone else gives her something? And I can allocate my resources to help animals, which is kind of my focus. But there are other times where I do say, you know what, I'm going to do something here, even though I'm not being asked to do so, because I feel like this is the right thing to do. Because it doesn't change my life at all to give $20 or whatever it is, $5, $10, $2. Someone, regardless of what they need it for, like I can tell their suffering is greater than mine. I'm in a rental car that I'm paying $100 a day or whatever it was. Like I'm in a very comfortable situation here. I have my first world problems. Like I texted that to my wife yesterday. I was an hour and a half late getting home. Didn't get home till 1:30 in the morning. First world problem, I got home, comfortable house, went to sleep. What I want people to do with the Impactful Vegan is to look at the world around you and look for suffering and see if you can answer the call preemptively. Now, I failed to do so yesterday in Dallas. I could have. I helped one person. I could have helped someone else, and I didn't do it. I did contribute to Pinky Cole's foundation, which helps struggling youth in the Black community. I wrote about that in my book as well. I contributed to that at her restaurant. Yeah, I did a number of things yesterday, but there was one like glaring thing that I didn't do. And we all do that every day. Every time we don't contribute when we could, even if it's to an organization that's on the other side of the world, that's helping prevent blindness in India, or helping help empower stray dogs in Thailand, or help poor animals suffering in Vietnam or Brazil or Argentina or whatever. Anytime we don't do that, it's very much like what I didn't do yesterday when it was right in front of me. And just because it's not in front of us doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah.
And maybe I still feel guilty because of that. That's why I brought it up today. Rather than just letting it roll off my mind, I thought maybe I should have done something yesterday. And now what that tells me, I'm actually about to hop on to Dharma Voices for Animals website and make a donation right now, because I feel compelled to do so. And I hope that all of us will, and understand that William McCaskill made it very, very clear. And I want to make this very, very clear for everyone listening, if it's not clear enough already, that our contributions can do so much more than our individual actions. Even if we become this influencer, really popular or whatever, it doesn't have the same impact as contributing financial resources to those organizations that have the infrastructure. They've been around for decades. They know how to squeeze the most out of for most of us listening, our US dollars to help the most animals suffering. And so that's completely clear. And so I do want that to be part of the impactful vegan approach, that we do open up our wallets a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, and you don't have to be wealthy or rich, but to say, if I lost $5 out of my pocket today, is my life over? Is it ruined? Can I still afford to eat? If the answer is yes, I promise you there's billions of people and animals where the answer is no. They can't afford. $5 will either make it or break it for them, especially in those suffering with the greatest poverty, humans and animals alike, humans and non-human animals alike. And so that's why I'm so appreciative to those who do contribute already. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned from this book, was that I need to do more. And I use that word need, I think, appropriately. I feel like I have a moral obligation to do more. I already live a comfortable life. I won the lottery. You know, I'm a white heterosexual male born in the United States of America to college educated parents. In society, I won the greatest lottery, perhaps. I have all kinds of privilege. I have to do a lot with that. I understand that, and I'm committed to that. And that's what the Impactful Vegan is, an extension of my contribution to helping the world. And I think this book is as good as any book out there at doing that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. And I hope that people listening can see, because some of you guys see Robert online and you kind of get to meet him at events, but like I've known Robert personally for a while now. Robert has such a big heart. He would give the shirt off of his back to someone if he needed to help someone. Like, that's who Robert is at his core. And that's why I'm excited for this book. That's why I was happy to have him on the show and kind of promote the book and buy copies and give it away. And, you know, I know we're shortly running out of time here, but there's a thing that you're doing for every book that you're selling, right? You're donating a vegan meal to a hungry child in the developing world with every book sold. Did you partner with Paul on that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, nice.
And Paul, as you probably saw, they just changed their name. All throughout my book, it's like Food for Life International, and now they're Food Yoga International, I think.
Okay, I just interviewed him a few weeks ago, so his podcast just went is live already. He's awesome guy. Yeah,
that's Paul. For anyone listening, that's Paul Rodney Turner. He co-founded Food for Life Global more than 40 years ago. They provide 1 million vegan meals to hungry children in 65 developing countries every single day. They've provided 8.7 billion meals to date. They just changed their name to like Food Yoga International, I think. Something like it just got changed. But yeah, that's just one of 5 organizations I'm contributing to with the
Okay.
proceeds of this book. But that's one is just kind of a really compelling one because we can feed a hungry child a vegan meal for only 50 cents or less in Kenya, in Uganda, in India, in Colombia, in Morocco, uh, the places where they work in 65 countries. And it's just one of my ways of giving back, just like I am to Dharma Voices for Animals, to the Good Food Institute, to the Humane League, and already, I mean, even just yesterday, I donated dozens and dozens of copies to animal sanctuaries around North America and to other organizations where they can learn some of these principles and apply them and even be more effective at fundraising for the organization. They can be more effective um, at allocating their resources to reduce animal suffering. They can resell the books in their gift shops and earn money as a result of my donations of like just literal just stacks of books to them. They can resell and keep all the money. Like there's all kinds of ways that I use the Impactful Vegan as a form of utility and as a form of effective altruism at its core. Like the book actually, the book in itself is an entity of effective altruism. And I'm so excited, man. This has been one of the most unique conversations I've had about it. And I don't know if that's just because I came back from the animal rights conference for 4 days and I have a lot that I'm thinking about, but this was by far the most in-depth conversation I've had about this topic with anybody. And this is one I can share with listeners around the world as to understand why I wrote the book and what the book is designed to do with all these concrete examples that show precisely why I feel this moral obligation to help others. And I'm just hoping that other people will join me in that fight.
Absolutely. It has definitely come through as we've been talking. So, for obviously I want to do the book giveaway. So let me just mention that before we go into like where can people kind of find the books, people can have a
Sure.
chance to kind of win a copy. So if you're listening to this podcast episode whether on audio or on YouTube, if you look into links in the description down below, there's a link to my Instagram account. This is where the giveaway will be taking place. We'll be doing a collaboration post with Robert and his pages so that everyone from our audience has access to it. Everyone outside of it has access to it. It is pretty simple. All you're going to have to do to go on there is just, follow my account, follow Robert's account. You'll have to comment down below. If you tag a friend, it'll be one entry. So it's one comment, one tag per comment. So you can tag as many friends as you want. And then we'll probably let it run for 7 days to give people a chance to kind of listen to this podcast. I know people listen to longer form podcasts on the weekend. So you have 7 days to kind of enter, and we'll announce the 5 giveaways and we'll ship that out to your house. But if you don't win a copy, or if you're too impatient like I am to wait to win a copy, Robert, where can people buy the book?
Yeah, thanks, Maxim. And I really appreciate you doing the giveaway. You did that with my previous book too. You've just been super generous and gracious, and you've used your resources to help a fellow vegan advocate like me. And that doesn't go unnoticed. I'm grateful for you, my friend. Impactfulvegan.com. From there, you can find out all the bookstores that carry it. The Amazons, Walmarts, Targets of the world, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, Books a Million, all that. And you can also download a free copy of chapter 1 plus the introduction. So you can get a 31-page PDF and see if this book is something of interest to you. So you can get a free sample right there on impactfulvegan.com. You can also submit a proof of purchase to claim some pre-order bonuses that we're offering as well, which include, I think, 3 of my other books, like totally free digital copies of 3 of my other books. As well as a bunch of other people's books and their courses and their recipe books and their workshops and all this stuff, which you can do on impactfulvegan.com. And you can obviously find me by searching Robert Cheeke or Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness on most social media platforms. And I'm happy to not only do a collaboration post, but do multiple collaboration posts with you to share various excerpts of this interview or whatever you want to share. You can count on me anytime you ask me to collaborate. The only button I know to hit is accept. So you can count on me for that.
Beautiful. I appreciate that. And ultimately, for everyone listening, I will put all the links down below, so you can go check out the website for the Impactful Vegan, and I'll put all your other websites as well, and I'll link your Instagram, so everyone can just go straight to it and ultimately submit to enter the giveaway, but ultimately just buy a copy of the book. And to a certain extent, I would encourage some of you to, if you can, buy the book in a physical store, simply because Amazon is like a digital space, right? So you actually have to kind of search for Impactful Vegan to kind of come up. But if there's enough people going to stores and ordering for it, they will order more copies of it. And then people that are not going to search it on Amazon will have access to it in the store. They'll just happen to walk by it and have access to it. So I don't know for you, Robert, but I love holding a hard copy of a book. I love the smell of it. I love going to a bookstore. So yeah, check it out in your bookstore. Get it on Amazon. Robert has the cover right there if you're on YouTube. And Robert, man, always a pleasure catching up with you and chatting and recording. I'm excited for our next podcast whenever we do that. But I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, likewise, Maxim. You're one of my favorites. You're the best in the business. Love working with you. Let's get another workout in person, and then let's go. I don't know, find some altruistic way to help people or animals in that community. We'll go visit an animal sanctuary. We'll go make some donations there. We'll volunteer our time. We'll go help some people in need. Like that's like not waiting till the holidays, but actually looking for opportunities to improve the lives of others. I think is something that you and I are both proactive in, and I think doing that kind of work, is meaningful to us. And I'd love to catch up with you and do that again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Like Ivy and I are going to try to come to Colorado and come and see you guys. And I'm down to go work on an animal sanctuary farm. I haven't worked on a farm since I was a teenager because I grew up on a farm. So I'm kind of stoked to kind of be shoveling some cow shit again and kind of like doing the hay. And, there's like, it brings back memories.
Absolutely. I love it too. There's an animal sanctuary. Well, there's a few right down the road from me here in Colorado. I highlighted a few of them in the book, including Love and Arms is the one I highlighted the most. And I was just there 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'll be there again very soon. And again, all throughout the year, numerous times per year. And I encourage others to do the same. Visit animal sanctuaries, donate to animal charities, spend time with farmed animals, get to know them a little bit differently, watch some documentaries, read some books, get involved, and be an impactful vegan.
Beautiful words to end on. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. Check out all the links down below. Enter the giveaway, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.